morning actually, earlier than later. Keeps me keeps me active. Otherwise, I would sleep until 10 or 12 o'clock in the afternoon. So yeah. How are things in the city of Yerevan today?
It's raining.
It's
And the
raining.
weather is cold today. No,
Yeah,
sorry, it's
it got really cold here yesterday. The day before yesterday, the temperature was 11 degrees centigrade, and yesterday it was 3 degrees centigrade.
oh, wow.
Yeah, so it dropped 8 degrees. Actually, no, the day before it was 16 degrees centigrade, and then yesterday was 3. So it dropped 13 degrees in just one day.
It's more worse than it will be. Just
Yeah, yeah. I think it's going to snow probably next week. People are thinking it's going to snow next week, which is really, it's very early. Usually we see snow in like November. We don't see it at this early in the year. Definitely not October. I can't remember the last time we saw snow this early in the year, but I don't know. It might be something that we just have to deal with this now. It already snowed in the state just next to my state, so we're a little worried. I wanted a little bit more of fall instead of winter this early. But does it snow a lot in Yerevan?
yeah.
It does. Okay, that's crazy. I know you guys have mountains and it snows in the mountains, but I wasn't sure about the city itself.
No.
But
It snows everywhere.
that makes sense. Oh, Ken joined. Hey, Ken, how's it going?
Yes, I'm fine. How are you?
Good, good. Things are good. Just busy today. Everything's been. I was telling Louisa that we had a change in temperature of 13 degrees centigrade in just 24 hours. Yeah, so it's a lot colder. It was 16 degrees centigrade on Tuesday, and yesterday it was 3 degrees centigrade.
Wow.
Yeah.
It is 19 centigrade here.
19 over there. Okay, that's still pretty nice. That's pretty
Yes.
nice. I think outside right now is like 5 degrees centigrade.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very cold. Hey, Humud, how's it going?
Everything is okay. Nothing special.
Good, good, good. That's always good to hear. I think Akka joined for a couple of seconds. He should be back. Usually he joins this morning class, so we'll wait just a little bit. But did you guys do anything interesting recently, Louisa or Ken?
No, nothing.
Nothing interesting? Did you go to that place, Lotteria?
No.
You did go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Lotteria is close to, not so close, but it's in next town.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I can go there.
Yeah.
if I like.
I don't think they have that burger anymore, honestly. I feel like that burger would be discontinued. I don't know how old that article
Yeah.
was. Yeah.
It kind of temporary, yeah, burger. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, we're talking about this article. Ken and I, guys, are talking about this article that we were looking at in this other class, where there's this restaurant that sells this humongous burger. Like it has fish, chicken, beef, vegetables, seafood, like shrimp and stuff. Everything in one burger, and it's called the Everything Burger. So yeah, and it's made at a restaurant in Japan called Lotteria. So I told Ken he should go and investigate if they still serve that burger. But yeah, it's kind of, I don't know how people would eat that, honestly. It's kind of disgusting. Like yeah, like I wish I had that picture, but we don't have it anymore. Anyway, guys, okay, so if Ekka's back, we will loop him in. besides that, guys, so today, just to introduce the class, we are going to be looking at prepositions of time, right? Which are prepositions that we use to describe, events, to describe when things will happen, and prepositions are always a concept in English that requires practice. I think even for folks who have studied English for a long time, prepositions can be confusing because we use them in different contexts. We use the same prepositions different ways. Sometimes we have exceptions to the rule, as is always the case in English. So we'll be reviewing that. And also, in terms of our article, so a lot of these articles I actually selected when the US government was still shut down, right? So they are no longer 100% relevant because the government has reopened, but we will be learning about how research, scientific research specifically, was halted when the government shutdown happened, because the government happens to fund so many different research activities and scientific projects. When the government shut down, there was no money, and as a result, those programs were stopped. So we'll be looking into that. Before we get started, guys, I want to practice a little bit of the prepositions of time, right? So I have a question for all of you guys, right? And my question is, what do you plan to do at 7 p.m. tonight? Or in the case of Aka, I think maybe 7 p.m. tomorrow night, right? What do you plan to do at 7 p.m. tonight? So let's start with Ken, and we'll go all the way to the right.
Maybe what should I do? Maybe I might attend the coding class. Yeah.
So how would you use the full sentence? I want you to use the preposition of time as well. Yeah.
I might attend coding class at 7 p.m. tonight.
Fantastic.
Not tomorrow night, actually.
Tonight? Oh, okay. So it's actually earlier than 7 right now?
Yeah, it's 10 p.m. here, so.
Oh, okay. Fantastic. Okay, Homo, let's go with you.
I might attend Colingo classes, or I might go to play football. I didn't decide.
Okay, and then how would you make it a complete sentence?
I might play football at 7 p.m. tonight.
Fantastic. I might play football at 7 p.m. tonight, or I might study Colingo. I haven't decided, right? Fantastic. Let's go with you, Louisa.
I'm going to have dinner. I will have dinner.
And the rest of the sentence?
That's it. I will have dinner at 7 p.m. tonight.
Exactly. Fantastic. I was pushing you guys. Because I want you guys to use the preposition of time, right? Because when we use the prepositions of time, and naturally when we are, like, for example, in a standard conversation, right, I wouldn't repeat the whole sentence. So you guys were doing it correctly by just saying, oh, I will study Colingo. And then when I pressed you, you guys said, okay, at 7 p.m., right? Because in this part of the conversation, I want you guys to practice this, right? And then eventually, when you learn the lesson or you master it, and when you're talking with somebody, you don't have to repeat the whole thing. So that was my idea behind doing that. So we're only down to 2 now. We're only down to you guys now. So hopefully it's a good class. Let's get started. The different kinds of prepositions of time that we're going to look at today involve. So before I get to that, actually, there are 4 different prepositions. Actually, 5 prepositions that we'll look at. But what is a preposition, right? When we say preposition, we are talking about words in English that explain how things relate to each other, right? So the way I learned prepositions a long time ago was, if you are comparing one thing to another thing, what word can you use in between, right? So for example, in this lesson, they gave the example of a mouse and a box, right? You can think of it as a live mouse. You can think of it as a computer mouse, right? Whatever you think is easier. Hey, Chris, how's it going? Todo beleza?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, Chris, how's it going?
Uh, I'm doing well, and you?
Good,
Hello,
good,
everybody.
good. Welcome to class. It's been a long time.
Yes, a week.
Yeah. Oh, maybe. Oh, was it really just a week? Oh, for me, it seems like maybe it was longer. But okay, Chris, we were just about to start our lesson, and I had a question for us. We're going to talk about prepositions of time today, right? So the question was, what do you plan to do at 7 p.m. tonight?
At 7 p.m. tonight.
Yeah.
I will make dinner at 7 p.m. tonight.
Okay. Fantastic. Okay. See you later, Luisa. Thanks for joining, Chris, because everyone has just been leaving this class. I don't know what's going on. Okay. So I have to prepare dinner, or I have to make dinner at 7 p.m. tonight, right? Fantastic. I liked how you completed that you answered the question in its entirety, right? You included the time at the end, right? So when we talk about prepositions of time, right? I was just explaining that the prepositions in general in English are words that are used to describe how one thing relates to another thing, right? So the way I learned prepositions was that I was taught that you have two things. So for example, a mouse and a box, right? You can think of it as a real mouse, as a computer mouse, it doesn't matter. But you can think of it, so how do I relate the mouse to the box, right? The mouse is on the box. The mouse is in the box, right? The mouse is, or I guess if it's a physical mouse, the mouse ran to the box, right? So on, in, to, of, right? As well as before, after, at, right? These are all these are all prepositions, right? And the ones that we use specifically for time are, for example, on, in, right? At, and then before and after. So prepositions of time, specifically, if we look at those, on, in, at, before, after, right? These are the ones that we use most frequently. So once we once we know those, we can decide on which situations require the use of which prepositions, right? That's really that next part. So we have the list, now let's see how we use them, right? So when do we use on, right? On we use if we are talking about specific days and dates, right? This is something that actually requires a little bit of understanding. When we say days in English, we are talking about days of the week, right? We're talking about Monday, Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, right? So these are days of the week. Monday, Wednesday, etc., right? When we say dates in English, dates are the entire, like, the day of the week, the month, everything, right? So the date is something like, on July 13th, 2013, right? Whatever, right? So the date is the actual day of the week plus, the month and plus the actual day, right? The actual number day, numerical day. So we use on for these types of scenarios, right? So what's an example, Ken, let's start with you, of a sentence using on as the preposition of time?
American Independence Day is on July 7th? July 4th, sorry.
July 4th. Yeah. So the U.S. Independence Day is on July 4th, right? Fantastic. The U.S. Independence Day is on July 4th, right? And we see this, it's a particularly important example, right? Because for sometimes we don't have to say on if we're talking about a special occasion, right? Christmas is on December 25th. You can also say Christmas is December 25th because we aren't indicating an action that we are doing on that day, right? We are simply saying that it falls on a certain day, right? So remember, you can say things like on Christmas, right? On December 25th, people are going to go to whatever, right? But your example was fine. There are exceptions to the rule. Sometimes we say Christmas is December 25th, or instead of saying Christmas is on December 25th. So it would also be correct to say U.S. Independence Day is July 4th, right? But on works perfectly fine as well. Any questions on that, Ken?
No.
Okay, good job on that. That's really good. July 7th, I don't know what day it is, but I know July 5th is the Independence Day of Venezuela, actually. So just one day after the U.S.
July 7th is a moon festival. I can't remember. Star Festival Day.
Okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
so that's why I maybe made a mistake.
Oh, that's fine. That's completely fine. And Chris, could you give us a sentence with on as a preposition of time?
Yes. My birthday is on December 20th.
December 20th.
20th. Yes.
20th. My birthday is on December 20th. Fantastic, fantastic. Great. So you guys, I think, understand on pretty well days and dates, right? Specific days and dates. We can also use some other alternate examples, right? We don't have to specifically say like this is where it gets a little confusing, right? You can also say in English, for example, on the 1st of the month, right? On the 1st of the month, instead of saying on November 1st, on December 1st, right? Let's say maybe it's a company for your maybe your water company, maybe your electricity company. Your bill is due on the 1st of the month, right? Your rent is due on the 1st of the month. My rent, for example, for this place is due on the 1st of the month. So they're not going to say it's due on the first day of the month or on November 1st, December 1st, January 1st. They'll just say on the 1st of the month, right? So we do have these specific kinds of phrases that aren't 100% specific, right? They're not as specific as the month and the day and all that kind of thing. But for these kinds of cases, we also use on. Any questions on that, guys?
Not yet.
Make sense?
No.
Okay, makes sense. Good. So now the next preposition we will look at is at, right? When do we use at, guys? At we use when we are talking about an exact time, right? An exact time that we can point to on the clock, right? So at we use for an exact time, something that we can point to on the clock, right? So Chris, can you give me an example of a sentence with at?
At yes. At 6 o'clock p.m. I'm going to pick up my children at school.
Fantastic. At 6 o'clock, I will pick up my children, or at 6 p.m., at 6 o'clock p.m. Well, actually, Chris, you made a very good sentence, but just one quick thing. If we say at 6 o'clock, then we shouldn't say p.m. after that. We can say at 6 p.m., or we can say at 6 o'clock in the evening, for example.
Okay.
Right? So we don't say o'clock with p.m. or a.m. So at 6 p.m., I will pick up my children at school. Good. Or we also say, another way to say it would be, I pick up my children from school.
Okay.
Yeah, both of those are fine. Good job.
Thank you.
And Ken, one from you, please.
This class started at 10 p.m.
Fantastic. This class started at 10 p.m. Japanese time.
Yes.
Right. Fantastic. This class started at 10 p.m. Japanese time. Fantastic. Any questions on at, guys?
No.
No.
Okay. I do want to indicate one other thing. So just like we saw on the 1st of the month, with at, we have we can also use at for words like midnight, right? Noon, sunrise, sunset, and even something a little bit more general that you can, you can still point to on the clock, but it doesn't have, maybe it's a time that you know that doesn't have a number, right? So like at lunchtime, right? At dinner time. I have to, or my mother always calls us to the family table at dinner time, right? Dinner time could be 6:30, 6:45, 7 o'clock, whatever, but we also use these phrases. So at midnight, at noon, at sunset, at sunrise, at dinner time, at lunchtime, right? These are all other words that we can use at with, right? And one other thing, guys, I've seen a lot of folks confuse this concept. Is midnight 12 a.m. or 12 p.m.?
AM, 12 AM.
12 a.m. Fantastic, fantastic, right? And noon is 12 p.m., right? So a lot of folks I know confuse the two, right? So midnight is 12 a.m. and noon is 12 p.m., right? I just want to make sure you guys have that down. Okay, fantastic. So we looked at on and we looked at, right? What do we use in for? In, right? In is used in English if we are talking about long periods of time, maybe an era, right? Maybe an era when it comes to history, or if we are talking about maybe a month, right? Or possibly even a week, right? So I always, actually, week, let's see. I was thinking in the third week of the month. Let's forget about that. A week is not the best example, but think about it as a longer period of time. So, for example, in the 1960s, people experienced a cultural revolution, right? In the 1960s, I'm talking about a decade, right? People experienced a cultural revolution. In January, or winter begins in Brazil in July, or I'm sorry, in June, right? Winter begins in Brazil in June, right? We can also say things like, in 2013, there were many earthquakes that affected East Asia, right? So we are talking about just specific, or I'm sorry, general times, right? It could be eras, it could be months, it could be years, right? It could be decades, right? It could be centuries even. In the 21st century, we enjoy lots of technology, right? So in we use for larger periods of time, such as decades, centuries, eras, and even months, right? Months of the year, months and years, right? So, Chris, could you give us an example with in?
In. Yes. I finished my graduate in 2012.
Fantastic. I finished my graduate in 2012. There's one quick way you could make that a little bit better, Chris. You can just use the past tense of the verb graduate.
Graduate, yes. I finished my graduate.
No. I think Chris, you're making it too complicated. It's actually much easier. What's the verb? So the verb is graduate. What's the past tense of graduate?
Graduated.
Fantastic. So just use that as your only verb, and then the in 2012.
Okay, I graduated in 2012.
Fantastic. I graduated in 2012. If you want to indicate a specific type of graduation, then you can say, for example, I graduated with a bachelor's or with a master's in 2012.
Yes.
Right? Fantastic. Ken, let's hear something from you for in.
In. Winter starts in December here.
Yeah, fantastic, right? Winter starts in December in Japan. So I think the one thing I would also add to this is seasons, right? Seasons are also an era of time. There's several months in terms of how long they last, right? So any questions, guys, on in?
No.
No.
Can I ask you
Yeah, of course.
about the season? What's right? I go to the beach at summertime or in summertime?
Great question. Which one do you think it is?
I think it's in
You're
summer.
right. Yeah, because summertime is still the same as saying summer, right? It's just another way of saying summer, right? So I visit the beach regularly in the summer, or I visit the beach in summertime. In is correct, right? Because summertime is not an exact time, right? When we saw dinner time and lunchtime, right? Those are still specific things, for example, on a certain day, right? You have lunch at, noon at 1 o'clock, right? And you have dinner at maybe 6 o'clock, 6:30. But summertime is much more general. It's a season, so we would use in.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions, guys? Ken?
It's not about preposition, but how do
Sure.
you describe 1 a.m.? Is it early in the morning or?
Fantastic question, right? 1 a.m. is when it's night. Yeah, just an hour after midnight.
Okay. So maybe, how about 4 a.m., 3 a.m.?
4 a.m., 3 a.m., those are early morning, right? When it's still dark outside.
Okay. Okay, I
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah. So midnight is 12 a.m. and then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 usually is when it's daylight, right? Outside. And then noon once again 12 p.m., right? And then 1 p.m., 2 p.m., 3 p.m., 4 p.m., those are all afternoon.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
in Japanese sense, we say morning after sunrise. But
Uh-huh.
in English, maybe 1 a.m. could be the morning because after midnight.
Yes. So the way we would say it is 1 a.m. early morning.
Okay.
Early morning, right? Or you can say late night, 3 a.m. late night. That
Late
works
night.
also. Yeah.
Okay, I got it.
Late night also works, yeah. Great questions, guys. Yeah, I know the AM, PM stuff, right? I met older people older Indian people who told me, I'll meet you at midnight. I said, are you sure? Like, midnight's kind of late. And they said, 12 p.m., midnight, I'll meet you at midnight. I said, no, it's 12. I mean, I didn't tell them because it'd be rude, but I saw this with something that really confused a lot of folks, right? They think PM is midnight because it's 11 p.m. Oh, 12 p.m. It's post day. No, midnight is 12 a.m. Noon is 12 p.m. Right? Fantastic, guys. Two other quick prepositions I want to go over, and these are much easier, I think, in terms of understanding when we use them: before and after. Right? So when we use before, you are talking about something that happens prior to something else, and when we are saying after, we are talking about an action or an event that happens after something else, or that happens post something else, right? So with before and after, we don't use any other prepositions when we use these sentences, right? We can simply say, for example, I wake up before 6 p.m. every morning, or 6 a.m. every morning. Right? Now I'm confused, AM and PM now. We wake up before 6 a.m. every morning, right? My mother always comes back. My mother always returns home before my father, right? We're not saying before at, right? It's not my mother always returns home before at 6 p.m. No, it's before 6 p.m., right? So before and after, right? Fairly fairly understandable. Can you guys give me an example with either before or after, Chris?
Yes. Before this class, I went to the doctor.
Fantastic. Before this class, I went to the doctor. Awesome. And Ken?
Before I attended this class, I had dinner.
I had dinner, right? Fantastic. Before I attended this class, did you say had twice, like I had dinner?
I try to make a past perfect.
Yeah, that's good. That works. Before this class, I had dinner, right? Or I had eaten dinner, right? We have is one of those verbs that we can say we can use for eat, like to have a meal, right? To have dinner, have lunch, right? So yeah, you can use had dinner as well. It sounds a little unusual maybe if you're saying it, because you say to yourself had. That kind of funny, or that it sounds kind of funny. The same thing with do, right? So
Yes.
I did do something. Or sometimes we hear that in English where people say do, and do actually means it means something funny in English also. So it's something for like children say that a lot. So okay, yeah, do means like waste,
Kind of.
like when you go to the bathroom, that's do.
Oh, okay, I got it.
So sometimes when you say, one time I remember saying I do like some sentence and I said doo doo and the guy said, haha, you said doo doo, and I was like, come on, man, let's be mature. Like we're 24, we're not 12. So that's funny. But anyway, we do have those kinds of examples in English with repeated words, right? So any questions, guys, on any of this stuff with prepositions of time?
No.
Okay, fantastic. So I'm gonna let's open up the article then, guys. We have just under half an hour. Let's read the article, and then I'm going to ask some questions about what we are discussing. Which Chris, actually, so I don't know if you heard, but about a week ago, the U.S. government was still closed, was still shut down for about 3 weeks. So it started about a month ago, and it lasted about 3 weeks until 1 week ago. And it was a big problem because a lot of actions were suspended. The government didn't have enough money, so they didn't open many services. So like if you wanted to get a passport, you had to wait. If you wanted to, you couldn't visit any of the national parks, any of the big areas that are controlled by the government, right? I was in Washington D.C. last week, and none of the museums were open because the government was closed, right? So this government shutdown also affected a lot of research, a lot of scientific research, because the U.S. government funds a lot of grants, a lot of scientific groups, a lot of research groups in science, mathematics, geology, a lot of these things. And these groups had to stop doing their work because there was no money. The government was shut down, right? So we're going to take a look at that, and let's see. I believe the article is maybe from an American newspaper. Yep, Fox News. So I don't usually listen to Fox News or use Fox News because I consider their politics to be a little distracting. They're very polarizing group for me, but that can be said of the other channels as well. So let's go ahead. FoxNews.com. This article on turns out the lights on science research, right? So when we turn out the lights on something, guys, that's an expression in English. What do the guys think that means? Let's turn out the lights on something. What do you guys think that means?
Maybe starting.
Turn out the lights is not starting, actually, Ken. It's the exact opposite.
Yeah, turn out. Sorry, not yeah. Stop.
Stopping something, right? So turning out the lights is to stop something. Turn on the lights is to turn something on. And we also say turn off the lights, right? We say turn off and turn on for just normal lights, right? But in this case, turns out is also another way of saying turning off something. All right. So from Antarctica to America, U.S. turns out the lights on science research. 2 weeks of sliced budgets and suspensions following congressional gridlock. A gridlock is like a traffic jam, right? So here they're saying congressional gridlock. The gridlock in the U.S. Congress, right? Politicians creating a gridlock. Politicians not willing to compromise, causing a big problem for the government. Have been a disastrous setback to a variety of American science programs, wasting millions of dollars and months, if not years, of research. Researchers who should be preparing for the coming summer season on Antarctica instead spent the week struggling to understand and cope as the National Science Foundation said it would run out of funding on Monday for the 3 key bases in Antarctica: McMurdo, Amundsen Scott South Pole, and Palmer. The agency is turning back incoming vessels and moving to withdraw hundreds of researchers, sources at the base told FoxNews.com. Science is closed for the season, for the year. There will be no science, lamented one Antarctic blogger who goes by the name Genevieve. Those researchers find themselves scrambling not just for jobs but for shelter. One makeshift Facebook page with over 1,400 members details the efforts to find roofs for their heads. Hi, fellow Antarcticans. I've got a queen bed, couch, floor space, air mattress, a balcony with a great view, and a wonderful park a block away here in Denver, reads one typical offer. Many researchers allow apartment rental leases to lapse and put their possessions in storage, expecting months on the ice. When we say on the ice, guys, what do you think this means? So in this part of the article, we are reading that some of these scientists, they actually set up their apartments for, they post their apartments so that other people can stay, scientists who don't have money. So many researchers allow apartment rental leases to lapse, right? And they put their possessions in storage, which means that they don't care. They allow their apartment rent to just, they don't pay the rent every month because they're always traveling and things like that. And they put their possessions in storage, expecting months on the ice. What do we think this means, guys? Months on the ice, or the expression on the ice?
I think they lost a month of job, of work.
Yeah, exactly. So being on the ice means, for example, to be without work, right? To be without money, right? If you're expecting months on the ice, you're expecting that for a few months you won't be earning a lot of money, right? Or you might not be earning any money, right, during that time. So expecting months on the ice, right? This really affects them negatively from a financial standpoint, right? Several hundred such workers are being returned home where nothing awaits. If anyone is up near the woods of Hanover, New Hampshire, I actually lived very close to this city, so it's funny for me. If anyone is up near the woods of Hanover, New Hampshire, I have 2 couches and heaps of floor space, another reads, alongside potential jobs for the suddenly unemployed, short-order cooks, painters, electricians, and more wanted, right? So these scientists, now that they don't have money, look at what they're doing, right? They are applying for jobs like cooks, painters, electricians, right? A very difficult situation for them. The situation on the ice is echoed across the country. Approximately 80% of the government is still operating as usual, including Congress itself, but the budget cuts were devastating to science. Radio telescopes maintained by the National Radio Astronomy Observatory in West Virginia, New Mexico, and Hawaii are being turned off for lack of funds, reported science magazine blog Science Insider. Along with the stations, 385 staff members are being sent home. Holy cow, this is really bad, radio astronomer Mark Reed said. If they don't operate the telescopes, it could mean a year's worth of data becoming useless. The National Climatic Data Center, an arm of the National Weather Service in Asheville, North Carolina, that studies long-term climate change, was shut down on the first day, right? So, and this article has many other examples. The very last thing I want to talk about is this last part right here. Once we start this process of drawing down to caretaker status, we cannot back out of it and restart the season, wrote Genevieve. So Genevieve is this scientist who's living on the Antarctic, right, in that southernmost continent, right? So she's saying, once we start this process of reducing our activity, it's really difficult to restart the season of scientific study, right? Mostly we are sad, frustrated, angry at our government, and ashamed to be Americans, right? Very powerful. I mean, when we look at the situation involving these folks, right, it's not easy. it's really not an easy situation if you're a scientist, if your work and your life depends on being able to study science, right? It could be a very difficult situation for them. So before we start the article, guys, hey Sean, how's it going?
Hey, how are you? Good. How are
Good,
you?
good. Good to see you. Good to see you. So we actually just finished reading the article, Sean. If you want to take a look at it yourself, you can click the link. It just has information on the U.S. government shutdown and how that affected scientists and scientific projects.
Okay.
And based on the article, it had a very negative effect, actually. So we'll be looking into that. But Chris, so what's your reaction to this? Does this surprise you that the government shutdown led to all these problems?
Oh, yes. We didn't wait for it. The United States, we became surprised for the shutdown.
You guys were surprised as well. So in Brazil, I think a lot of countries. I was talking to a friend from Brazil, and I told him, by the way, the U.S. government is shut down. He said, no way, get out of here.
Yeah.
Right? It was something kind of impossible. And I mean, the thing, it wasn't 100% shut down, right? Because that would be a catastrophe. But we did see many non-essential, right? Things shut down.
Okay.
Like what? I'm sorry, Sean?
Yeah. So yeah, that's interesting. I mean, so it's just some national parks are shut down, but the critical department's not shut down, right?
Yeah. So the Department of Defense was still operating. The Department
Right.
of
Otherwise, it's
Revenue. Yeah. Otherwise, Canada would invade us, Sean. And we don't want that, right? We don't want Canada.
The Martians will invade it.
Yeah, maybe exactly, right? It would be a very, very tough situation. So, yeah, the Army was still working, the Navy was still working, right? The congressional leaders were still getting paid, okay? The congressional leaders were still getting paid. So even though they were the reason for the gridlock, right? They were the reason for the traffic jam inside the government. They were still getting paid. Don't you love that? That's the best thing about being a politician. You cause the problems, but you don't see you don't have to suffer any of the consequences, right? Ken, what's your reaction to this? Or are you surprised by the fact that the government shutdown led to all of this trouble in the world of science?
The reason of this shutdown because of the Republicans is against hinder the Obama plan.
Yeah, so the Republicans had a lot of different issues, right? There were two, I think, from what I understand, there were two big problems. The first one was Obama saying that Obama was pushing for his health care plan, which was Obamacare, right?
Oh, yes.
Or the Affordable Health Care Act, I think is what it's called. But because of that, the Republicans were very angry, and there was also a question about raising the debt ceiling, right? So the debt ceiling, this is extremely complicated American crap. You guys don't need to know about this.
But maybe I take that in Japanese, so I know what it is.
So you know what it is, right? Okay, fantastic. So yeah, raising the debt ceiling, what does that mean?
Kind of government trying to increase how much debt they got. The American get. Yeah.
Exactly. So the U.S. government borrows unbelievable amounts of money, right? So we borrow billions and billions of dollars for I don't know what. God knows what we do with this money. But we borrow billions and billions of dollars. We were approaching our limit of how much we can borrow, right? And so the debate was, should we raise that limit or should we keep that limit where it is, right? If we didn't raise the limit, then it would be as if the U.S. government doesn't have a credit card anymore. And that is a disaster because we are a credit card loving society, if you guys don't know that already, right? We spend money until we are in debt up to our eyeballs, right? Up to here. We are in debt up to here, guys. All of us. We are drowning in debt, right? So that was a big problem too, raising the debt ceiling, right? There was opposition over that, right? But also a lot of it was just this Republicans hating on Democrats, Democrats hating on Republicans, nothing actually working for the people. The people were getting, you know,
exactly.
they were facing all the difficulties, right? So, some questions for you guys, right? So, the first thing I want to ask is, do you think this shutdown will affect other countries' scientific projects or just the United States?
Affect to the other countries because American research is pretty strong and influential, and some researchers cooperate with American researchers, so they have to stop cooperating. So it affects to other countries too.
Yeah, yeah. What about you, Chris? Do you think the same thing?
Yes, I agree with Ken. I think this problem have a continual effect.
It'll have a continued effect, right? So many other countries, like maybe Brazil, maybe like when we talk about Antarctica, right? Antarctica, they're talking about the research there. A lot of countries in South America are also working in Antarctica, right? I think Brazil has a base there. Maybe Argentina has a base there, right? What about you, Sean? Do you think this will affect other countries as well?
Yeah, I think like the telescope, they get data which will be shared by scientists all over the world, right? And also there's some other cooperations between U.S. scientists and other countries' scientists. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely, right. So the telescopes that they mentioned in this article, right, a lot of these technologies have global impact because the U.S. researchers are either working with international researchers or the international researchers are depending on the U.S. research for their research, right?
Yeah. I have some questions. So,
yeah,
I heard that some of NASA, some scientists in NASA, they have to be on furlough, but they get paid,
Scientists in NASA? Scientists in NASA probably did get paid. I think it depends on, your rank, right? If you're if you're maybe a senior scientist, you probably got paid. If you were maybe one of the lower junior scientists, you probably didn't get paid. But what was funny was one of the most popular things that was circulating online during the shutdown was if you went to the NASA website, so if you went to nasa.gov, it said, for example, this site is unavailable due to a lack of funds.
Due to lack of funds?
Yeah. So the NASA website, many people over the world maybe are interested in what NASA is doing, right? This site is closed due to a lack of funds. So it was very funny to read that. And many people had it as their Facebook picture, like America is doomed, NASA is not working anymore. The Russians will take over,
But my point is, they don't need to work, but they get paid. I mean, how could we? What's the point here?
It's a hypocrisy, right? It's a hypocrisy. I mean, when we look at these politicians were still getting paid,
right?
And they're the ones. I think if anybody, they should have not gotten paid, right? I mean, so many government employees, right? People who work in the Defense Department, maybe people who work in the the Defense Department wasn't closed for the entire time. I think it was only closed maybe the first 3 days or something like that. Right. But I mean, billions of dollars were lost in just wages, right? In just money that you pay to people, right? And the politicians still took their paycheck.
Okay.
Right? So.
Yeah. Okay.
It is what it is.
I have to say, dirty politics.
Yeah, dirty politics, absolutely dirty business, right? A lot of it's sad, but that's what it is, right?
Okay.
So guys, yeah, go ahead, Sean. Absolutely, go ahead.
No question. So U.S. government printed, lot of money, right? Printed a lot of cash. Yeah. And but in U.S. we didn't see the severe inflation. So where's the inflation? So the inflation has been exported to other countries. I mean.
I don't know. That's a very good question. My economics background is very weak, but I would say I think from what I think we are still in a recession right now in the U.S. Right? I don't think we have actually been able to bounce back from the recession. In terms of the inflation of the currency, if it's been sent to other countries or not. I don't know, honestly, Sean.
Okay.
I think the reason that we maybe don't see as much of the effect is perhaps because I think they like lowered interest rates. Another like very recently, or the last time they lowered the interest rates, they did it pretty recently, I think. So that may be controlling the currency, or it might be controlling how strong the dollar is, because the dollar is extremely weak now compared to what it was before, right? Like one U.S. dollar is equal to one Canadian dollar, actually, which has never happened. I mean, I remember when I was growing up like 15 years ago, the U.S. dollar was one U.S. dollar was like $1.50 Canadian, or other, you know, it was a much stronger currency. Now the dollar is much weaker, so honestly, I have no idea, Sean. I would be making a mistake if I said something about inflation. I'm studying economics next semester, so maybe I can answer your question then. But right now, I have no idea. Yeah, I'm sure there's articles on it, Sean. If you find if you find a good article, the Financial Times newspaper is very good. Wall Street Journal is very good, right? I think they'll be able to give you a better idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So my next question for you guys is it fair to these scientists? I think it's a pretty easy answer. Is it fair to these scientists that this research has been suspended? At least now maybe the research is back, right? But the weeks that they lost, right? The time that they lost in the last 3 weeks, is it fair for them that they had to go through that episode? Sean, let's start with you, and then we'll go to the left. Sean, you there? Oh, maybe he bounced. Chris, do you mind starting?
Yes, can you repeat, please?
Sure, yeah. The question was, was it fair to the scientists that their research was, suspended?
Oh no, it's not fair.
Why isn't it fair?
Unfair, yes, unfair.
Yeah, but why though? Like, how come? Why is it unfair?
Because they worked for a long time and for the research, and they spent much time and much money to stop their work. Yes, their work.
And was it also, I mean, were they making any money themselves during this time?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Were they like earning any money when this shutdown happened, or did they lose money because they didn't get paid?
Yes. No. They shouldn't lost money.
Yeah, they shouldn't have lost money, right?
Yes, because this they received.
They received, yeah.
Received a problem, but the problem weren't. I don't know how can I say, but I think this problem. There.
It wasn't their fault, I think, is what you're trying to say.
Yes, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. No, that's fine. But so it wasn't the scientists' fault, right? But they were still suffering the consequences, right? They weren't getting paid. They couldn't continue their research, so it was unfair for them, right?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris. Do you want to say something else?
Oh, just a little. I'm sorry for it.
No worries. Go ahead.
And I think if stop the research, they will lose much more money because research bring good result in the future. A lot of things depend on the research.
Absolutely right. So much information, so much internationally relevant information, right? Other countries like we looked at. Ken, would you agree with what we heard from Chris?
Yes, because that's not their fault. And politicians, I know, still earning their money, but other public officers, including researchers, cannot be paid. That's unfair.
Absolutely. And Sean, I have a different question for you, right? So when we looked at this article, we were looking at, for example, weather research, global warming research, climate change research, right? Do you think, I mean, think about all the information we have on climate change, right? We have years and years of information, right? Just a couple of weeks, does it really matter? I mean, is it really a big deal if we don't have that information?
So you mean it doesn't matter if we just lose a couple of weeks data?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking, right? Does it actually matter? Maybe a couple of weeks, it's okay. Okay, September, October 2013, we didn't have information. That's fine. Or is it fine?
I don't think it's fine because we did sometimes, I mean, in the research, we may need a continuous data, right? I mean, this is the data in a continuous time period. If we lose some data in the part of this period, that may, I mean, affect the result. I don't know, I guess.
No, that's absolutely correct. It might affect the results. It might compromise the accuracy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So if we say something like missing data, right, will compromise the accuracy of the research results, right? Compromise the accuracy of the results. Ken, do you agree with that?
Oh, yeah, exactly. Some research, should take a long time. Maybe if the collecting data stops, that damages whole research or something. It could happen in some specific research field.
Exactly, right? And I think, I mean, in terms of just ideas, what do you guys think they're doing in Antarctica? Why the focus so much on Antarctica? What do they do there? I actually have no idea what they do there. I think maybe they measure different, maybe like the ozone layer, things like that, right? Because it's at the southern pole of the world, so maybe there's things there. But I also don't know. Yeah.
I've heard of the, if you dig down the Antarctica, you can collect ancient atmosphere. So to analyze the ancient atmosphere, we can know the ancient climate or ancient environment.
That's awesome. I had no idea. So all that ancient atmosphere is trapped underneath the ice, then it seems, right?
Yes, as a bubble.
As a bubble. Wow, that's awesome. Sean, did you know about any of that stuff that happens down in Antarctica?
No.
I don't know either. Yeah,
no idea either.
I just know that it's very cold and very southern, and no one lives there but just a few scientists, and even these scientists had to temporarily leave, right? Yeah. Anyway, guys, so that's the end of our class today. I have another one starting soon. Just wanted to ask you guys if you guys had any questions. Sean, I know you joined a little bit later, but we talked about prepositions of time. So on, in, at, before, after, those kinds of words. And then Ken or Chris, did you guys have any questions on the other stuff?
No.
Make sense?
Yes.
All right, fantastic, guys. Well, thank you for joining once again. Another class is starting right now if you guys are free. Otherwise, I'll see you guys soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Alrighty, guys. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Kind of temporary. Yeah. A burger. Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, we're talking about this article. Ken and I, guys, are talking about this article that we were looking at in this other class, where there's this restaurant that sells this humongous burger. Like, it has fish, chicken, beef, vegetables, seafood, like shrimp and stuff, everything in one burger, and it's called the Everything Burger. So, yeah, and it's made at a restaurant in Japan called Lotteria. So I told Ken he should go and investigate if they still serve that burger. But yeah, it's kind of, I don't know how people would eat that, honestly. It's kind of disgusting. Yeah, like I wish I had that picture, but we don't have it anymore. Anyway, guys, okay, so if Ekka's back, we will loop him in. Besides that, guys, so today, just to introduce the class, we're going to be looking at prepositions of time, right? Which are prepositions that we use to describe, events, to describe when things will happen. Morning, actually, earlier than later. Keeps me active. Otherwise, I would sleep until 10 or 12 o'clock in the afternoon. So, yeah. How are things in the city of Yerevan today?
It's raining.
It's raining.
The weather is cold today.
Yeah, it got really cold here yesterday. The day before yesterday, the temperature was 11 degrees centigrade, and yesterday it was 3 degrees centigrade.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it dropped 8 degrees. Actually, no, the day before it was 16 degrees centigrade, and then yesterday was 3. So it dropped 13 degrees in just one day.
It's worse than it will be.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's going to snow probably next week. People are thinking it's going to snow next week, which is it's very early. Usually we see snow in like November. We don't see it at this early in the year. Definitely not October. I can't remember the last time we saw snow this early in the year, but I don't know. It might be something that we just have to deal with this now. It already snowed in the state just next to my state. So we're a little worried. I wanted a little bit more of fall instead of winter this early, But does it snow a lot in Yerevan?
Yes.
It does. Okay. That's crazy. I know you guys have mountains and it snows in the mountains, but I wasn't sure about the city itself.
No.
But
It snows everywhere.
that makes sense. Ken joined. Hey, Ken, how's it going?
Yes, I'm fine. How are you?
Good. Things are good. Just busy today. Everything's been. I was telling Louisa that we had a change in temperature of 13 degrees centigrade in just 24 hours. Yeah, so it's a lot colder. It was 16 degrees centigrade on and prepositions are always a concept in English that requires practice. I think even for folks who have studied English for a long time, prepositions can be confusing because we use them in different contexts. We use the same prepositions different ways. Sometimes we have exceptions to the rule, as is always the case in English. So we'll be reviewing that. And also, in terms of our article, so a lot of these articles I actually selected when the U.S. government was still shut down, right? So they are no longer 100% relevant because the government has reopened, but we will be learning about how research, scientific research specifically, was halted when the government shutdown happened, because the government happens to fund so many different research activities and scientific projects. When the government shut down, there was no money, and as a result, those programs were stopped. So we'll be looking into that. Before we get started, guys, I want to practice a little bit of the prepositions of time, right? So I have a question for all of you guys. Tuesday and yesterday it was 3 degrees centigrade.
Wow.
Yeah.
It is 19 centigrade here.
19 over there. Okay, that's still pretty nice. That's pretty
nice.
I think outside right now is like 5 degrees centigrade.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very cold. Hey, Humud, how's it going?
Everything is okay. Nothing special.
Good, good, good. That's always good to hear. I think Akka joined for a couple of seconds. He should be back. Usually he joins this morning class, so we'll wait just a little bit. But did you guys do anything interesting recently, Louisa or Ken?
Nothing.
Nothing interesting? Did you go to that place, Latteria?
No.
You did go.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Lotteria is close to, not so close, but it's in next town.
Oh, okay.
I can go there.
Yeah.
if I like.
I don't think they have that burger anymore, honestly. I feel like that burger would be discontinued. I don't know how old that article was. Yeah.
It